In this video, I show you Lv427 terrain that I used for Nemesis. But before we get into this subject, I'm going to go ahead and share with you what the GGGG is for this month. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this month of January of 2022, we have the printed and painted K-Wall modular sci-fi terrain, as well as 3 additional pledges for that Kickstarter that's happening right now. We have these 3 boxes from Archon Studios' Rampart 3 Kickstarter, which is also going on right now. 3 patrons are going to receive $30 credit to use for the Lv427 web store so that they can pick up some of these STL files. And finally, the $100 is going to go towards a crowdfunder campaign, which currently the Patreon supporters are going to be voting on soon. If you're interested, go ahead and go to my Patreon page using the link below, and you can see what other GGGGs might be added, and if you want to get in on that. Before we go any further, Mark did want me to clarify that Lv427 is not affiliated with Awakened Realms nor with Nemesis, but wanted to clarify that this set can be used not only for Nemesis, but a bunch of other games. But they did create some specific pieces so that this set would fit with the theme that's found in Nemesis, the board game. They do have over 250 different rooms and styles, and in a little bit we are going to go over to the web store where I'm going to walk you through some of the options that are available. So I only used a fraction of all the things that are available, and we're going to see how cool their terrain is. Also, at the very end of the video, I do have a painting tutorial, a quick painting guide. I've used this theme a lot in the past using my sci-fi terrain because it is really quick to be able to paint it up to have it look sort of dingy and rusty with some steel over it. So if you want to see that, go ahead and use the timestamps below if you want to skip ahead to the painting tutorial, and you can get your set painted up really quickly. I also have links below to their Facebook site so that you can see what other people's builds look like. People have done a lot of cool things with their terrain, and you can get some ideas as well there about different games that you can play. For example, Star Wars Legion, Infinity, Batman, and a bunch of other games. Obviously, Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the core. So basically any skirmish or tabletop board game that uses an enclosed space like this. So Mark from Lv427 did reach out to me actually almost over a year ago, asking me if I wanted to review his terrain. And at that time, I really couldn't think of any use case where I would be playing any of the games that I have using this kind of terrain. Because most of the skirmishes that I play, like Star Breach, Stargrave, Kill Team, all of those sort of used more open terrain without this much cover and restricting the line of sight. Although Infinity, I know, would play really well because they have dense terrain for that game. But he did recently reach out to me again, and after thinking about it, I was like, oh, you know, I recently got Nemesis, and so this would be perfect to create a 3D board for Nemesis, especially since that game is super thematic and immersive. So I went ahead and said yes, so he sent me over a number of his different files to try out. So I did print them out, so thank you very much to Mark and Lv427 for sending me these files. Each one of these takes anywhere between 12 hours to 24 hours to print, depending on how large it is. So I had my printers running nonstop in order to create all of the tiles that's required for this board. And the unique thing about Lv427 is that most of their pieces are basically the same consistent size as this, or different iterations of this size, and this does fit on smaller print beds because this is 130 by 130 by 54 millimeters high, and that consistency has a number of advantages to it. One, personally for me, is that you can stack all of this and store it in a box really neatly. Also, because it has a standard size configuration, you can put them together relatively easily because they're fitting within a grid like this. Now, they do have different sizes that you can get, but for the sake of the Nemesis board, I printed out all of the same consistent size tiles. Also, I was a little bit worried that because they don't have a formal connection system like using OpenLock, and they do have an option if you want to magnetize it, you could, but as much as I love magnets, I found that the weight of each of the tiles actually is heavy enough that it doesn't really move around a lot. And in fact, these doors just slide in a slot that is created by putting two of them side by side, and that actually works perfectly well for these doors to go in and out. So I think that's an ingenious way to do the doors. Now, there is an option to put an archway for the doors across the top. I opted not to print those out because then you can't stack them when you put it away in storage or when you're creating new levels. So I opted not to print that piece, but all of the STL files do come with that optional piece if you want to print that out. So not only do they have a huge variety of different rooms that you can get, so not pictured here, there is an armory or a gun room, there is mess halls, there is a med. So in actuality, because some of those features are part of the game, I could have printed those options out and then swapped them in once I flipped over these tiles for Nemesis and found out that this room, for example, is the armory. But for ease, I went ahead and just used the standard corridor set to print out most of these with just a few in order to sample some of the different other sets. So if you do purchase the standard core set, which is usually $12, right now it's on sale for $6, then you can print out most of these rooms that you see here. Now they did create a dedicated navigation room, as well as this cryo chamber room, and then these engine rooms. So if you purchased everything in order to recreate the board that you see that I have, then it's going to be $42, or again with the sale, $6 off, you're going to be able to purchase all of this for $36. And then you can print out as many of these as you want. Again, we're going to check out the website and I can walk you through some of the different options that are found there. Even though I was originally hesitant about using this system, once I started printing it out and laying it out like this, I actually found wanting to print more and more pieces because it just looks so cool. Not only for games like Nemesis, but also I'm actually considering buying Aliens, the board game, in order to use it on this cool terrain. And this is one of the few times where actually the terrain is motivating me to consider buying an actual board game that was designed for this. So Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the core is only $60. So I'm seriously thinking about just picking that up because you can do all kinds of random customized maps with that game. So that might be something I consider. Now, definitely I'm going to use this for 5 Parsecs from Home, which is a solo adventure rule set. And also I just ordered Pulp Alley, which I hear works well with this terrain too. So those are two of the systems that I'm looking forward to using, and I do plan on expanding out my collection here to be even more versatile and to be able to use with other games. And the good thing is that they have a number of files where you do have larger rooms. So for example, this nav room here, this is just one example of where you have a more wider open space so that you do have more gunfight with less obstructing terrain that you see. Although this hallway here is pretty long, and so you can have a battle or a fight using a hallway in order to stretch it out a little bit further. The other thing that I really like about these tiles is it is blocked off so that you do have a 4x4 grid inside of each of these tiles. Now, some of the walls are overlapping some of that, but it makes it so that if you're playing a game that requires a grid system rather than using a measuring ruler, then you can use this system really easily just to be able to move it square by square. So that is also another great feature. And it does look like each of these squares is a little bit bigger than an inch. So you're going to have plenty of space to be able to move things around. Let me go ahead and share with you now how this system was adapted from the original board in Nemesis, because this obviously looks really different than the original board. So this is the original board, and actually it is the starter board, which you know just by these arrows. And this is the navigation room, and here are all the other rooms. And as you can see, the hallways are really long, but they actually don't serve a purpose because the only things you place in the hallways are the doors. So how Lv427 configured the board is they basically got rid of these hallways and just put in the rooms. So for example, here's the navigation room, and then connected to it are these 3 rooms. And if you look here, here's the navigation room, and they are connected to these 3 rooms. And the way that we just designate the number that is in each of the hallways are designated by these printable numbers that I just stuck on right next to the door. And there's enough that you can put one on each side of the door, but I found that that's not necessary. You just need one, and you know that there's a 4 that happens there. So when you're making the noise tests and you roll the die, you know where to place it, you know, accordingly, and you can stick the noise markers right by the numbers. So that's basically how it works, as well as you have the corridors that are signified by this. And I did print these out just using double layer PLA, which in Prusa Slicer, and I think Creality can do this too, where you have it automatically stop at a certain level, and then my machine beeps at me to change the filament color, and I change it, and so it just prints in different colors based off of layer. So I did that with all of the tokens, and you know, in retrospect, I wish I would have shrunk down the numbers because they're bigger than they need to be. You can definitely see them right now on the board, but probably could have gotten a little bit smaller. But fortunately, in each room there is plenty of space. And if you take a look, this is the size of the board. The actual printed set here is only a little bit bigger than this board. So I thought it was going to be huge, but in actuality it still fits on my 4-foot by 4-foot table here relatively well. So I think that works out super well too. And then with the tiles that are yet to be uncovered, you can just slot them down in there like this. And then once they're uncovered, you can either just lay them flat as per normal, or you can set them to the side like this, because there's really no real reason to keep them flat, because in the game there is a pointer to show how many of these crates that you picked up and how many are left. But what I use is just a 4-sided die to determine how many explorations that you can still do in each of the rooms, and that works out pretty well for me. And then this is the cryo chamber here. This is all one big room, as well as the engine rooms. This actually is the entire room. This isn't a separate room. That way you can put any of the miniatures and features that are in the engine rooms there. And then you can go ahead and still use all of these fire tokens, as well as the repair cogs that you need. So overall, just super impressed. And then with this, where there's actually a feature in the middle of the room, this special tile that I used, the air scrubber tile, you can just plop it right here on top like this, as well as any larger miniatures that don't fit, you can just stick on top. But that's just a little bit of variation for the different kinds of tiles that you can use. And also Mark provided this sheet here so that you can keep track of the turn orders as well as the countdown right here, so you don't have to have your board in order to keep track of that. And then for these cards, this is actually I found on Thingiverse, this card holder, which I appreciate a lot since I don't have to set out these cards every game, and I can put it away really quickly. Again, links in the descriptions below if you want that. And as I mentioned before, this whole set isn't glued together or anything like that, just the weight of them keeps them together, and it creates this gap in between each of the rooms where you can slide down this door pretty easily and remove them as you need. And in any single game, you know, I haven't had this many doors out, so probably the 6 doors that I printed out is plenty for a game that I've played. So the adaptation overall, I think, is excellent and looks really, really good. So these ones with these pipes, these orange and yellow pipes, are the standard corridor set. And you're going to get all of the configurations, the hallways, as well as, you know, the 4 ways, 3 ways. So with that set, you're going to get everything that you need. This style here, with the smaller ones, smaller pipes going across the bottom, as well as what looks like consoles in the corners. This is the industrial corridor set. And you can choose to mix and match like I did, or you can choose just to be consistent with everything. This one with the 3 pipes along the bottom with what looks like, again, consoles up here, that is the long vent set. And this also has a pipe going across the top like this. And then one of my favorite sets is the reactor, where you have these 2 pipes along the bottom, but more interestingly is you have these I'm not sure what they are, along the corners, and it matches the cryo chamber set a little bit here. So I sort of like the design on this one, the reactor set, and I think that looks pretty cool as well. Let's go ahead now and go to the computer, and I can walk you through their web store. So use the links below to go to Lv427. Actually, that name comes from Aliens, the movie, the first one, where the planet they go to is actually Lv426. So that's just a play on that. But if you go here, you can check out a bunch of what they have available. The gallery is a good place just to see a little bit of variety and the different paint jobs that other people have done, and just fantastic in terms of the level of detail and items that are available. Here's the armory. I actually downloaded this file and hope to print that out at some point in the future. But look how great this looks. And look at this, you got the face huggers here, as well as just patients and scientists. And then they have a set where actually the whole place is sort of infected, and you have that growth of the aliens happening all over the place. And you can get actually really large builds. Like I mentioned before, check this out. You can get really wide open spaces, and they do have scatter terrain that you can use as well. They also have files that sort of stack on top like this and creates different levels. So this is really super interesting. So for games like Necromunda, you can create these towers or situations where you have multi-level platforms. Now someone's playing Fallout Wasteland Warfare. I actually have a tutorial video on how to play that game. Look how cool this sort of hangar looks. So you can peruse that on your own. But let's go ahead and check out what they have available. So if you go to corridors, you see this huge list of different sets that you can get. And if you want to recreate the set that I have, you want to go to the standard corridors, and you want to get the starter corridor set. Again, it's on sale right now for half off, $6. This is a great deal because it's going to give you almost every file that you're going to need in order to print out that set. And in all honesty, you don't need to get the specialized pieces for Nemesis. If you go back up here under corridors, go down to Nemesis Inspired, and you don't have to buy the navigation room or the cryo chamber or the small engines. You can honestly, if you only want to get the standard corridors, you can actually fill it out with all of those. But I think for a full immersion, you should go ahead and just pick up these three that you need and print them out in order to create the board. And if you click on any of these pieces, it does give you the build, sort of the number that you need and how many straightaways, how many corners that you need, so you can sort of follow this. These engine rooms, the E3s, have been replaced obviously with the engine files, as well as what's up here with the B1. That is the large navigation room now. So this just helps you figure out what are the pieces that you need printed in order to recreate the set. Make sure also to pick up the counters here. I don't actually use this, but instead these are all of the counters that I used to print it out, and they do provide the exact number that you need. Again, you can use two of each of these, one on each side of the door, but again, I've only used one because I found that to be plenty. You're also getting these vents. Here are the vents as well. Also, if you don't want to print out the vents, they do actually provide the paper version, so you can just print it out on a piece of paper and then stick it down. And then here is the counter, the countdown track as well. Also, what's really cool is there is mapping software in case you want to pre-generate so that you can see what it looks like. Because again, not all of the rooms are squares, like I was showing with the Nemesis board. So sometimes you might want to configure and figure out how all the pieces are going to fit together. So just having this available for free is a great option. Also, if you don't have a 3D printer, you can click on this and find out who is authorized to be able to print out these things for you. And so here in the United States, you can just pick the one that's closest to you and they can print it out. Here you can also select small, medium, or large rooms. Let's go ahead and go to large rooms just to see what different options that they have here. And like I mentioned before, they have over 250 different rooms. So it will give you a lot of different options. I mean, let's just check this one out here. The Large Colony Hub Science Bay. So you're just getting a lot of different variety. And here are just some examples of these rooms. Just the variety is fantastic. Oh, you know what other game this would be good for? Would be Core Space. Reminds me a lot of the Core Space tiles. So make sure to check out their website if you want to see what other options that they have. So there you have it, another fantastic STL file available for not only Nemesis, but a bunch of other games, especially ones where you need corridors, where they might be in a station, where you might need more terrain, blocking terrain for games like Infinity. Again, I plan on using this for Pulp Alley as well as 5 Parsecs from Home, so you can create a bunch of different scenarios using this set. Please like and subscribe and make sure to hit that like button. Again, go to my Patreon page if you want to have an opportunity in receiving a $30 credit towards purchasing level 427 terrain. Bob the Beholder is going to be making that draw at the end of this month of January 2022. Stick around for the painting tutorial if you want to see that. Otherwise, happy printing, happy gaming. We'll see you next time. So the first thing I do is I just spray primer, black flat primer on this, and I use Rust-Oleum 2x Ultra Cover. And I actually print, all of my filament is in black for all of my 3D prints, and then just spray it over with this flat black. And as you can see here in some of the shiny spots, I didn't get it completely because it's a little bit hard to tell when you print in black what part of it has been sprayed with the primer, but that's okay, it doesn't matter too much. And the first colors I'm going to use is Antique Gold and Burnt Orange, but you can pick any of the colors that you want. And I'm going to paint up the pipes from this set, starting with the Antique Gold. And the reason why I picked these colors is because it has relatively good coverage. I mean, if I were to choose just regular yellow, it would be really hard to get a nice coat of yellow on here. And then once I do that side, I'll go ahead and do these in the corners. And then just do the same thing with the burnt orange. I managed to miss these middle ones right here, so don't forget these. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab Rookwood Red, or any rust colored red is fine. I do use craft paints for most of my terrain just because it's a heck of a lot cheaper. I use Americana. Here in the United States you can find this in both Hobby Lobby or at Michael's, but feel free to use any brand that is available to you. And I also use a hog's hair brush. It's just a stiff brush, usually used for acrylics or oil painting. And just get some on here. And this is going to provide the rust effect on this model. And just basically, you want to be intentionally sort of splotchy and uneven with this color. And here's the reason why I did go ahead and paint the tubes first, because I actually want some of the rust effects to be on the tubes too. Now, if you don't want the rust effects to actually be on the tubes, then you can actually paint them after you do this step rather than before, because for the panels and some of the colors I'm going to put on the panels, I actually want them to be brighter. So that's why I'm not putting the colors on them before I do this step. So it's really up to you what kind of style you want. I'm going for, you know, sort of an older, more rusted out and weathered station that is darker. And that's why I'm going with this color scheme. Also, this is super easy. I do a lot of my terrain doing this color scheme. If you've seen any of my other sci-fi terrain videos, you'll know that this is a technique that I use a lot because it is super fast. And because this set has so many tiles that I need to paint up, I needed a fast system to be able to paint it up. And I'm going for that really scary sort of dark vibe that was in some of the Alien movies. Like in the first movie, everything was white and brightly colored, except for where they go down into the ship where all the eggs are at. But this basically, I think, is a really quick and fast way to make sci-fi terrain. So that's pretty much what you're going for, sort of splotchy. Now I'm going to grab some tin. This is Deco Art Extreme Sheen. Previously, I have used Folk Art Metallic Gunmetal Gray, but I can't find this anymore. So just try to find a little bit darker of a silver, not super bright silver, just a little bit darker, and any of those will work. Okay, so you just want to get some onto your paintbrush, and you are pretty much doing the same thing that you did with the rust, although I put more of this on than I do the rust color. But feel free, you can be splotchy as well with this silver. And what this does is it clearly gives that metallic look to your piece. Now see how easy that was? I mean, super easy and quick. So when you have a lot of sci-fi terrain to do, this is one of my favorite methods. Alright, so this is where we have an assortment of just random colors. You can pick any of the brighter sort of primary colors that you want, because now we're going to do some of the details, all the buttons and things like that. And because I want these to be brighter, that's why I'm putting them on now after I did these two coats. So basically just dot a bunch of the panels and put colors wherever you want with these brighter colors. And it just makes it look like that there are lights on, you know, and that the panels are still working, which is good since the ship is relatively aged and run down, but the fact that some of the electronics, and that's true to the game at least as well, and that just gives it a little bit extra detail, which I think is worth doing, because this actually isn't a lot of work, just a dot, put a dot of paint on a couple of spots. So it just gives it that level of authenticity. And I am choosing also to put some lights on these floorboards, because I feel like because these are raised, these are going to be, crew members are going to be tripping on this all the time. So the fact that these lights are working, and I'm just choosing to make it blue, but you can make it any color that you want. Probably a yellow would actually be more helpful than blue. But yeah, just put a line in here like this, and you can use any color that you want. But pretty quick and easy just to detail a little bit. I think I'm going to also do orange too, just to have one more color. But look how much pop just having that extra color on these panels gives it. And that's pretty much it for these rooms. So you can bust out a room pretty quickly using this method. Alright, with the walls, what I did was, again, I printed everything in black, and then I first spray painted with white because this orange is not bright enough to go onto black. So I first put on white, and I sprayed it at a 45-degree angle because see how there's these black edges along the bottom? I still wanted some shading. So that's why I spray painted at a 45-degree angle this way. And same thing with this side. And then after the white was dry, I went ahead and did the orange color, and again spray painted this way. And as you can see, I was not bothering to be really providing a ton of coverage, because you can still see some of the white underneath, and that's perfectly fine because again it gives that sort of weathered look. Here on this door you can see a little bit more the white specks that are still on there, and even here it's a little bit scratched up. So all of that is just to create more of a weathered and distressed look. And originally I was just going to use these doors for my set as is, and definitely you can stop here. But when I put it up against my finished set, it was just too bright and too clean compared to the rest of the set. So I'm going to go ahead and try weathering it right now. And again, I'm going to grab my Rookwood Red. And you can definitely just use the same method that I used for the rest of the rooms. It would probably tie in more, a little bit better stylistically. But I'm going to go ahead and just show you a different way to go about doing this. And I'm going to just grab a sponge, a little bit of, I think this was packaging material that came with a miniature, and then grabbing some of the Rookwood Red, like so. I'm going to dab off the excess because I don't want that much on. I'm going to, starting from the bottom, just go ahead and start speckling on the Rookwood Red. And basically what that does is it makes it look more rusted, where you got these rust spots. And you're going to have more rust towards the bottom of things rather than the top. So this is going to mute the colors a little bit more, like so. And I think that's pretty much what you're going for. So go ahead and do this to all of the sides. Now I'm going to mix up some medium. I have some burnt umber here, just any dark brown, craft paint is fine. And then black, I'm going to do 2 to 1, brown to black. And then I'm going to put some matte medium. And then a bunch of water. So I'm going to add a little bit more brown to it. I decided to go ahead and put in some colors up here as well, just to add, tied into the rest of the set. And for the windows for the navigation room, I just use these clear colored plastic dividers. Links in the descriptions below if you want to order from Amazon here in the United States. But you can find these in any office supply store or even at Walmart or something like that. Just get the ones with the colored tabs, and then you can just measure them out. And I just used a ruler and a razor blade and cut it out, and these just slide right in here like so. And so this is for the navigation room. Here is the side one as well. And you can pick whatever color that you want. I picked green because it sort of stands out a little bit. But whatever color that works for you is great.